Oh, hey, what's up, wrestling fans? It's the Two Bros Wrestling Show. Don't tell anybody, but we're not exactly live tonight. What's up, Kevin?
Well, that's because Doug, there's a little football game that we didn't want to compete against that's happening, and so that's actually what tonight's Two Bros Wrestling Show topic is about. And Doug, who do you have in the Super Bowl?
Um, the Seattle Mariners. Is that a team?
Doug, name
Yeah.
a team, one of the two teams that are in the Super Bowl.
The guys with the helmets and the other guys with the shoulder pads that people don't
Uh,
like. Wait. Is Taylor Swift's boyfriend in one of the teams?
I'll give
Is
you
that a
partial
thing?
credit for that. You are correct.
Okay. All right.
So
That's a team. The Taylor Swift's boyfriends with the
whether you're
helmets.
rooting for the Chiefs or the Eagles, or you don't have a dog in the fight, or you're like Doug and don't know which dog is actually in the fight to begin with, either way you go, thank you for joining us for some wrestling talk.
Okay, hold on. You're talking about the Big Dog and Tribal Chiefs, right? Is that the teams that are playing the Big Dog and the Tribal Chiefs? Those are both Roman's teams, right?
That's right. It's Roman Reigns. It's OG Bloodline versus New School Bloodline. How about that?
Okay, yeah. OG Bloodline always then.
Now Doug understands a little bit more about
Yeah.
football. No, he does not.
No,
But
no. Go sports ball.
we appreciate you pre-gaming with us. If you are watching the big game, we wanted to drop this episode early if you're watching it a day that it drops. But we are talking pro wrestling, and we are talking Roads to the Top is the main event tonight. And that
What you did
is
there, roads to the top. I see that.
because he is at the top, and he will be headlining WrestleMania, which they say is the Super Bowl of wrestling.
I don't think you can say that. I think they're going to take our ad revenue now.
Oh, no.
Yeah, watch out. Ooh, opening bell. News time.
Before we get to talking about Cody Rhodes, we do have some news we want to go through. And we'll start with some follow-up from the recent Royal Rumble. First, we were reported last week about Drew McIntyre supposedly storming out of the Rumble, frustrated, saying that, somebody had to get their spots in. Doug, you were very astute. I had assumed that maybe he was upset with Damian Priest, who had thrown him out. Something had gone wrong there. Something had gone wrong there, but Doug, you said it might not have been Damian. We now know that it was not Damian Priest that he was upset with. Doug, who was it?
L.A. Knight. Where's my yeah?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, apparently LA Knight is the person who sort of got in the way of the spot, at least according to Drew and Damian in their minds. The flow of what they had planned for kicking off WrestleMania angle was interrupted by Knight, and therefore was what was supposed to be kind of hot, ended up a little clunky or lackluster. And I have to admit that I don't really recall LA Knight getting in the way, but I also don't recall the Drew Damian spot as being very memorable. So maybe they have a point.
Yeah, because I haven't went back to watch it, but I don't really recall, like you say, him getting in the way or. And again, I know that Damian eliminated Drew, but that's about it.
Yeah, if it was supposed to be a hot kickoff to an angle, it wasn't for whatever reasons. Reportedly, Drew did not show up for the after party at Royal Rumble that they hosted for the talent. But also reportedly cooler heads have prevailed and that everyone has kind of calmed down since then. But we will see if they're able to reignite what they had planned, and if Drew ends up taking on LA Knight instead now or something.
That's what I was going to say. Let's get Damian involved in a program with Jacob Fatu, and let's go ahead and work this whole Drew and LA Knight thing now. The heat's already there.
Right, we'll see how it goes because there is definitely a lot to come that is coming out of Royal Rumble as we're on the road to WrestleMania, which is a good segue for the next story because it's more Rumble adjacent news. Because this time I want to talk about Alexa Bliss, who was made her return, a surprise return during the Women's Rumble. It would seem that Triple H and WWE weren't just trying to swerve us by indicating Bliss wouldn't participate. Reportedly, her negotiations had hit a snag for real, and that the two sides did not come to an agreement until the afternoon of Royal Rumble. And
okay.
that's how close it was.
Triple H isn't the mad genius we sometimes believe him to be there.
He did ink her up for 5 years is what the reported length of the deal is.
Okay, cool.
So she is back. Moving on to more news outside of Royal Rumble and the Nature Boy. Actually, I guess this is Royal Rumble adjacent because the Nature Boy has lost the son-in-law.
Yes, he has. Apparently, a while back.
2025 Women's Royal Rumble winner Charlotte Flair and WWE superstar Andrade are no longer married. To Doug's point, it wasn't they are getting divorced. It is, they've been divorced since last summer, apparently.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Kind of sad, poor Andrade. At the time I'm seeing Charlotte, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is good. The couple will be back on the road together,
right?
No. Turns out
they're just going to be awkward now.
It's just definitely going to be awkward now.
Yep.
Speaking of people being shown the door, apparently Duke Hudson is no longer with NXT, having quietly been released last month. This is somewhat surprising considering the large role he's played in NXT over the past year, particularly as part of the Chase U angle. He's also good on the mic and solid in the ring, so very surprising, especially as WWE gets prepared to expand their programming even more. But I'm sure Tony Khan has an opening.
Doesn't he always?
Which brings me to our next story about Tony apparently having and then filling an opening, but following her Collision debut last weekend, independent wrestler Megan Bain was informed by Tony that she is now All Elite. So congrats to Megan.
I thought that was already happening. I'm confused by that.
Unlike WWE, Tony tends to have people stick around for a while and you presume they're part of the promotion, and then he makes an announcement that it's official. So I guess he does a lot of per night deals where you work a number of dates, but you're not under contract. But now she's under contract.
Oh, well, good for her. I just already assumed she was All Elite. That's on me. Shame on you, Tony. I'm blaming it on you, not me. It's your fault, Tony.
It is Tony's fault. Then we will end tonight's opening bell with another follow-up, and that was a story we brought to you last week about WWE Evolve premiering March 5th on Tubi. We were speculating during our show as to who would be making up this roster, and it would seem that we were kind of correct in our speculation that it is going to be a mix that will provide a pathway for independent wrestlers and college standouts to transition to WWE and NXT. They gave us some more context this week with a press release quoting Shawn Michaels, revealing that the show will feature talent from the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, participants in the newly established WWE ID program, which seeks to bridge the gap between the independent wrestling scene and WWE, as well as talent from WWE's Next in Line NIL program, which signs college athletes to developmental deals. The promotional videos and things they showed, the footage of Evolve thus far, did show some current NXT talent that is involved. So it would seem that at least some of the signed talent are going to be working Evolve to help give some experience to all of these new recruits. Not everyone's coming out of the independents with a wrestling background. Some of these folks are coming out of college with an athletic background, and then the ID program. They're coming in just out of Booker T's school or Bully Ray's
Yeah.
school, and so it does make sense that maybe some of the lower level NXT folks that also need reps would be working this show as a way to give some shine to everybody and have them. The more people you work with the more varied experience they have, the more the talent benefits from that. I did think it was. I really am kind of intrigued with this concept because as part of the press release, they also talked about how wins and losses are going to mean something, and it's not like a AEW. We're going to keep track of who wins and who loses, but apparently they're having WWE ID matches on the independents. And if it is a WWE ID match, it pretty much means that whether you win or lose, of course, this is scripted, but whether you win or lose is going to be part of you earning your way up to appear on Evolve. So with this whole pipeline from the independents, they are, I guess, trying to help these independent bookers sell shows and like come out tonight to the Armory and watch.
Yeah, okay.
Joe versus Steve, and whoever wins is going to appear on Evolve next week.
Okay.
Which I think that's kind of cool.
I've always liked Steve. I'm glad he's finally getting his big chance.
Well, he's got to beat Joe first.
Well, Joe's not that good, dude. He's really not.
I do like that they're putting some stakes in this for the independents to sell shows based on the participation in Evolve. I really am curious to see how
like that idea.
This show checks out. But yeah, March 5th, tune in on Tubi.
Cool.
And with that, Doug, it is time to hit the main event.
All right.
And Rhodes to the top. To begin our conversation, Doug, I want to start, honestly, before we get to where Cody is today, we need to really show that journey. And I don't think any conversation about Rhodes can really have context without the beginning of his story. And that beginning is he was the Rhodes kid that Dusty actually raised. Dusty was on the road with the NWA, missed out on a lot of the child rearing of his other children and regretted it. And I mean, that included Dustin. I mean, he just was not there as a professional wrestler, especially in those days, pretty much lived on the road. Dusty was older, more settled, was in a more of an executive position as Cody grew up. And therefore, Dusty had a lot more to do with actively being there and raising Cody. And I wanted to start there because I think that unlike his, Dustin, who, played basketball in high school, Cody, likely wanting to get his dad's favor and attention, went straight into amateur wrestling in high school.
Yep.
And he excelled at it too. He was state champion for Georgia in both his junior and senior year. So again, I think it's important to set the stage of Cody's early life to show that how driven he was to succeed in wrestling.
That I don't think I fully realized that Dusty had so much more of an influence on Cody, but I think it does kind of show in Cody that there's a bit more business savvy, and I mean the business, not necessarily business savvy, but the business. He's more savvy about it than I think Dustin has ever been, but
Fair.
It makes sense.
And they had other other siblings too, and none of the other siblings went into the business. Now, and Dustin, who Dustin gets his flowers here. He has had longevity wise, you don't make it in wrestling as long as Dustin has. And he's had a very diverse career. But I think it's fair to say that from the start, it was Cody, not Dustin or any of the others, who was driven to be the center of a wrestling promotion. And even a creative executive type center of a promotion in the way that Dusty was. Dustin was never the headliner. in anywhere he's been, and he never seemed to show an interest in booking or being behind the
Right.
scenes, and that was always Cody, and which is interesting considering he wasn't the oldest and he wasn't the one that didn't have Dad there. You'd think that Dustin would be the one trying to get Dad's attention that way,
Right. Yeah.
but I do think that no story about how driven Cody is can be told without that background of why maybe he is that way.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of reframes things a lot, knowing that he's the son of a plumber's son. you know,
He is the son of a plumber's son,
and very focused on not being a plumber.
Which could lead us to Cody's initial run in pro wrestling, considering how driven he was and what his aspirations obviously were. It's no wonder that we would have a lot of twists in the road, that he would become disenchanted, because he spent a decade in WWE. He started at Ohio Valley in 2006, and he didn't leave WWE till 2016, the first time around. Doug, do you have an initial memory of Cody? Do you remember him from the Hall of Fame speech for Dusty? Was that the first time we actually saw him on camera?
It may be. I think my first real recollections of Cody though were with God, what was the next generation of
Legacy?
Legacy, yes, Legacy. Yeah, I think that's my first real memories of them, because you had Cody and Ted DiBiase Jr. Is that right?
Yep.
And somebody else's son. Who's the third one?
Was it Sean Stasiak?
Was it? I was thinking it was what am I thinking? It was maybe a Samoan. Does Superfly have a son? No, okay. Tamina's in the business. Okay, so I'm confused about or was it Randy, or kind of like the leader of Legacy or something like that?
Interesting enough is that Randy actually was one of the people who trained Cody back in Ohio Valley Wrestling. So the whole thing that they've been playing up the last year or so of the closeness of them, it's not just storyline. I mean, Randy really has been around since the very beginning of Cody's career. You're right. He is the one who founded Legacy. But my first memory of Cody really was that induction speech where we have Dustin inducting Dusty into the WWE Hall of Fame. Cody then gives a very impassioned speech. And I remember thinking at the time, it's interesting that this Rhodes, who we do not yet know, is the one that did most of the talking. And I remember how impressive he was on the mic, passionately talking about his father.
That's wild, because I have absolutely no recollection of that.
You should go watch that, because it really does give a preview into just how passionate he is about wrestling and his dad, and also very telling that it is he, not Dustin, who does most of the talking, inducting his father.
That is, I'm going to have to go back and watch that, because with this, it continues to reframe things, and you begin to see a definite pattern forming very, very early on in his career. Then
the very first appearance he actually had on the main roster itself was he debuted on Raw, and he was defending his father against Randy Orton, who had slapped Dusty. Of course, Cody would take the L that night, but I remember thinking at the time is that, wow, Dusty's kid has a good look. He has charisma, as well as that name, obviously. And I thought this could really add up to something. You mentioned Legacy. That is what came next for him. And I thought that at the time I remember thinking second generation wrestler faction. One, you and I, we love factions. We talk about how much we love factions. I liked Legacy. I liked the initial idea and concept for Legacy. I should maybe preface it that way. Did you like?
Yes, I did like Legacy, but I think Ted DiBiase Jr. to me stuck out more than Cody did for whatever reason. And I'm googling Legacy right now, because I've got
to see who the other guys were,
to see who the other guy was. Yeah, because there were three of them, right? Like three first gens.
Oh, or maybe I'm wrong.
Well, let's
Doug's on the case.
Research. Yeah.
While Doug does the on-air research, I will say that despite it being a good concept, I think sometimes a group or faction can drag down an individual if it's just not working. And I think that despite the fact that Cody, obviously had a lot of potential, Cody was kind of the baby being thrown out with the bathwater when Vince gave up on the Legacy faction. He, by default, gave up on Cody as well.
Okay, here we go. I just checked on Perplexity, and here's what I got back. So Legacy was founded by Randy. It had Cody
Yep.
and Ted DiBiase as like the main trio, but there was Manu and Sim Snuka. So there was a Snuka involved.
There was a Snuka.
Are,
Manu.
so,
Who was
Manu and Sim Snuka? I'm not sure. Manu. Who is Manu? We will find out.
But that does go to show the. Go ahead.
That's Manu.
So it goes to show the point that when the faction doesn't work for whatever reason,
he's an Anoa'i. Where's he? Why isn't he in Bloodline now?
So when you give up on a couple of the guys, the whole faction pretty much doesn't work. And Ted DiBiase Jr., for all his talent, had some issues that prevented him from climbing any ladders. The other two, we have to look up. That's how memorable they were. So Cody really did get the baby thrown out with the bathwater, and the legacy isn't going to work. And so therefore Cody is now having to pick himself up for the first time in his career with a failure that, you could argue wasn't completely his fault.
Mm-hmm.
He did have some success after that, though. I don't think Vince soured on him completely, because then we got the dashing Cody Rhodes gimmick.
Yeah.
Doug, I liked Legacy. I even liked dashing Cody Rhodes. I thought, okay, now we get to see the guy be a heel, and a vain heel. He's Cody's an attractive fella, so him playing the vanity card and the face mask when he had the broken nose, I liked all that. I don't know about you, but I actually thought, okay, again, the kid is showing there's something here.
So with that, I thought this is good for like a mid-card act. This is okay. I just wasn't into that act either. I did get. I'm not going to say I've never been a Cody fan, because I did very much get into Cody later on. But in all of his WWE, his first run,
in the initial run,
in the initial run, it never really hit with me. I can never find it, because it was all there. I mean, he's Dusty's son. Of course, so was Dustin. But I think I wonder if there's also a bit of a history on purpose of screwing with Dusty's sons too from time to time, because Dustin and they both had some bad gimmicks. Okay.
Yeah, because before we get to that gimmick, there's the Intercontinental title run that he had during the Dashing Cody Rhodes era. I know it's Intercontinental title is by definition mid-card, but you have to work your way up to, like, you're not going to start out main event. And I thought he was still on it at this point. I felt like Cody was on a trajectory that as a young Rhodes, he is following the path to get there. Mm-hmm. And I like dashing Cody Rhodes. I thought the whole Intercontinental title gimmick, he brought back the white strap. And he held it for a bit. I thought that it was maybe the start of what was going to propel him to the next level, because it was putting some prestige back on the Intercontinental title that had for a while just fallen out of favor. But then that's where he did hit a ceiling. He hit that ceiling hard. And then he was kind of lost in the wilderness for a couple of years of nothing, until we get the Stardust character. And obviously we cannot tell the Cody Rhodes story without getting into Stardust. It's divisive for sure. I really think in some ways he made the most of it. But this was Vince's idea to retread the Goldust character. And you were hitting around it first. I want to talk more deeply about it, though, because there were always, even before Stardust, let's go back Goldust, there were always conspiracy theories who thought Goldust was a rib by Vince to get under Dusty's skin. Here's your kid,
Mhm.
a Rhodes. We're not going to call him a Rhodes. We're going to
Mhm.
quote unquote Gold Dust, and they're going to make him ambiguous, feminine. This,
Mhm.
I think Dustin had a great. I think Goldust succeeded more than Vince probably thought. But do you think it was a rib, or do you think Goldust was meant as someone who Vince really believed in as a character?
No, I think it was. I think it was a hilarious idea in Vince's mind, and who better than to pull off this gimmick than let's give it to Dusty Sun. You know,
So if you think that, then by extension, you probably have answered my second question for you. If Goldust
bring
was
it to
meant
Cody.
to be a rib and not a
Yeah.
Stardust wasn't a tribute to being your brother's younger brother, you think it was also a rib on both Dusty and Goldust?
Absolutely. It's almost like some sort of weird punishment zone for the one man audience that was WWE for such a very long time.
There's much history that can be relayed of Vince doing these very childish things as ways to entertain himself, if not
Mm.
an audience,
Yeah.
and to totally rib one or two people by doing these sorts of things. I agree with you that I think that I'm not sure about Gold Dust. I don't know, but I do think that by the time you get a watered down Gold Dust, it has to be this is a rib.
Mhm.
This is me giving up on you. But since we're giving up on you and you're under contract, we got to do something with you. Hey, wouldn't this be funny? I think that's
Mhm.
maybe the way of Vince McMahon thought at the time.
Sure. Yeah. I'm totally on board with that train of thought that it was, hey, this will be funny. I'll get a laugh out of it. The boys in the back might pop for it.
Well, because of that, do you think that Stardust ever had any potential to be anything other than mid card? Or, I mean, do you think that despite the fact that Cody really did do more with, just like his brother before him, he did more with the gimmick than maybe people could have expected?
He did do more for the gimmick. Yeah, I remember. Uh, again, wasn't a Cody fan early on through all the WWE run, but I think as Stardust, I recognized this athleticism that Cody actually had that I don't think I'd ever clicked on before. And it's like, okay, Cody is really or Stardust
Yeah.
is really an athletic guy. Start to see him, and I don't know, maybe it was the whole Cody Rhodes. I don't know. I expected more out of Cody Rhodes. Maybe I didn't expect as much out of Stardust. So when I saw what Cody can do as Stardust, I was like, oh, okay, look at this guy. And that's a weird way to think about it. But maybe Vince got him a little bit over with me by ribbing him like that. So I don't know.
And that is the whole give me lemons and I'll try to make lemonade. The way that his father
Yes.
had done with the polka dots and the way that
Yes.
Dustin did with the original Gold Dust, I really felt like Stardust started as a retread, watered down version of Goldust, and by the end, Cody was doing this real interesting comic book supervillain where he was kind of deranged, and he was, and that again was showing like, okay, he is really constrained by a bad character, but look what he's doing with it. Again,
Hmm.
there's something there that you could see. It just was not being allowed to fully blossom.
And really, go back because I realized I didn't answer your question. I don't think Cody could have gotten much further with that gimmick unless he did like Dustin did in WCW with the whole seven angle, where he's like, "Yeah, no, I'm not doing this," and it totally breaks character. But
So
having
you
it done
don't
as
you don't
work,
you don't see Stardust ever pointing at a WrestleMania sign.
no, I don't.
No,
Unfortunately, for
I mean I agree with. I think that was more than could have ever been expected from the character. I don't think he had much more places he could have gone with it,
yeah.
which is why he was apparently pleading with Vince for 6 months to let's end the Stardust character. And when it didn't happen, he asked for and was, granted his release, which,
Mhm.
we can think of that now in terms of how often we hear someone wants their release and it's being granted or not being granted. But, whether your name is Rhodes or not, especially at that time, voluntarily leaving the big money of WWE,
Mhm.
the center of the pro wrestling world, and a time when there was not a AEW to go to. I mean, you're taking a pretty huge risk.
Yes, absolutely. And he and Brandy were married at that point, right? Am I remembering that correctly? So we
He
have,
did meet her in WWE, yes.
yeah, because when he left, she also split soon
Yeah,
afterwards. So,
that's right. She was doing announcing work at NXT, if I recall, at the time.
hmm
But yeah, you with no real number two promotion to go to, you just head off into the wilderness with just that name. And now that you don't have to be the character anymore, and
and he couldn't take the name with him. He could just be Cody for the longest
that's
time.
right. That's right.
So he didn't even have the name at that point.
And this is the interesting, I think, that some of the most interesting eras of Cody Rhodes. And because I think that people like to point to AEW, and we'll get there, but
Oh, I do.
people like to point to AEW as when Rhodes became, a star. And found himself after all the Stardust nonsense and dashing nonsense and all. But really, I'd argue it was the independence and promotions like Ring of Honor and the NWA and New Japan that allowed Cody to find himself. So this is like the 2016, 2018 period. Doug, I don't know if you saw Cody during this period or if it was like just wrestling dirt sheets and internet and you're just reading about Cody a lot during this period, but there definitely started to become a buzz about Cody Rhodes in that 2016, 2018 time frame.
Cody really got on my radar when he was in Japan.
In Japan.
With
Yeah, you watched a
yeah,
lot more Japanese wrestling at that time than I
I
did.
did absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Um, I had the pleasure of catching Rhodes work in person a time or two during this era when he was Ring of Honor champion,
Uh,
and it was like what, and you can tell me if this was your experience with the New Japan stuff because you saw more of that. I probably saw more of the Ring of Honor, but for me, having the familiarity just like you would have with what he was in WWE, what I saw was a wrestler. I
yes,
saw I saw Dusty's son, and I didn't
yes,
see a gimmick. All I had
yes.
ever seen in WWE was a gimmick, and now I'm seeing a pro
hmm
wrestler who is also Dusty Rhodes' son, and that never was the way it felt in most of his time with WWE.
Totally agree with that because he became a wrestler. It's the Rhodes was implied because for the longest time he couldn't be Cody Rhodes because
Yeah,
WWE owned that name, so he didn't go with Cody. He just went with Cody. Worked. I don't exactly remember when the whole American Nightmare thing came along or that dream tattoo that he has, which both those things that I think are very cool. The American Nightmare, a total tribute to his dad, and the dream tattoo again another total
that's
tribute
very
to his
cool.
dad, like right out in the heart. Just that just hits right. But
Did you like
he
him in Japan?
I came to like him in Japan because,
Okay.
like you said, he was a wrestler. And then by association with the elite is where I really got sucked into the whole Cody Rhodes, persona that I don't even know if you should call it persona. It is what it is. Cody is Cody. I get that.
Yeah. And he showed a lot of passion and things on the
Yes.
independent scene to build his name as a Rhodes and as a a successor to the throne of the National Wrestling Alliance when the National Wrestling
hmm
Alliance wasn't yet much,
Yeah.
and Billy Corgan was trying to build it back into something respectable again, which I argue has happened. Cody was a part of that journey too because he held that world title
hmm
which instantly gave the NWA more prestige, having a
Sure
Rhodes holder
did.
that title again. The
Absolutely.
Ring of Honor championship it was elevated. He had some time with Impact. Doug, you were watching in New Japan. He worked
Mhm.
every place.
Everywhere. Yeah,
The
he was
only
kind of like that.
person I can I'm sorry. I was going to say the only person I
That's
can
good.
think of that was very similar to this. The only other story I can remember. You know where I'm going,
Yeah, because I was about to say it. Yeah.
AJ?
Well, I was thinking the Matt Cardona when he gets
Oh
released.
yeah,
He works everywhere. And he is literally everywhere at that point.
I was thinking of AJ when he left Impact and then went
Hmm.
everywhere and then suddenly became a
Yeah,
bigger deal everywhere.
yeah.
Again, I think we take for granted that you can, okay, things didn't work out for you in WWE. I'm going to go to New Japan. I'm going to go
Hmm.
to AEW, especially AEW now. That's where you go, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But before there was an AEW, it was a lot more dicey to go out and try to build your career somewhere else. Maybe you
Hmm.
end up at TNA and Impact, but there wasn't a lot of eyeballs there, especially at that time.
Or you're working what GCW with like the pizza slicer guy, and he's
Yeah.
working those angles.
And instead, Cody spent 2 years in Ring of Honor, in NWA, in Impact, in New Japan, again, working anywhere and everywhere. And suddenly he was a much bigger deal outside of WWE than he ever was during the time that he was in it.
Mhm.
And then comes the insult from Dave Meltzer that basically birthed the company.
Yep.
Let's talk about
Meltzer,
that period, Doug. I
Meltzer,
know it
Meltzer,
was,
Meltzer.
I mean, for those who don't know, Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer had made a comment about it, and maybe Doug, you can remember the story even better than I. I can't remember which member of the elite, but they had mentioned, how, wanting to put together an independent show, and Meltzer made a joke about like the ambition of what 10,000 seats.
Yeah, I was thinking, and I may be wrong about this, but I was thinking a fan had asked Meltzer something along the lines of, "Did he ever think an indie show could fill a ten
Yeah,
thousand seat, a venue?" And of course, Meltzer laughs it off. I forget the exact comment that Meltzer makes, but Cody replies to that tweet and said, like challenge accepted, Dave, or something like that.
yeah,
And then,
and
okay,
and
there's the promoter Booker's son right there.
don't tell him he can't do something, right?
Uh-huh.
All in, with the most successful independent pay-per-view of all time. They easily sold out the arena, proving Meltzer wrong about the
Mhm.
number of tickets they can move. I do think that it gets lost sometimes, the role that Ring of Honor played in this. I know we
Oh,
say it
yeah.
was Cody and the Elite, but it was a lot of the Ring of Honor infrastructure.
Yes.
Um, Still an accomplishment, though. I mean, it was an accomplishment for Ring of Honor to be a part of something like that. And of course, that would lead to further development of the concept, and like, hey, if we could do this, and it directly leads to the creation of AEW, which is, regardless of
Mhm.
whatever you think about AEW or AEW right now, it has been very good for the pro wrestling industry to have a second promotion that is as strong as AEW is.
Oh, yeah. You going to bed?
Um,
Okay. Have a good night.
I don't care how big a fan Tony Khan was of the wrestling business. I just don't know that even if he had designs to start something, I don't know that AEW would have ever gotten off the ground without Cody Rhodes. Do you?
I think because okay, so Tony has give us a billionaire father and the money to start a wrestling company. We're wrestling fans. We're not
Yeah.
promoters. We're armchair bookers at best. But then you have Cody Rhodes, who literally sat at the learning tree of Dusty Rhodes. You need that. You have the Bucks who ran some maybe small indies in there, but there's no real wrestling infrastructure in AEW without Cody. I do believe that totally.
And he had the proof of concept too. Hey,
Hmm.
Tony, you're a
Yeah.
money mark, but you got this true passion for pro wrestling. Look what we just did with your money and your passion and our passion. We can make something different together. And they did. I mean, I agree. I don't know that Tony wouldn't have tried something, some way, somehow. I just don't know that AEW would have gotten off the ground had it not been for Cody Rhodes. I agree with you on that. Um,
I mean, the elite had the perfect vehicle to promote that because being the elite at that time,
was hot,
huge. Yeah,
huge.
absolutely. Absolutely. So you take that as a vehicle for promotion. You take all these, this click from New Japan to fire things up, and then you take a wrestling mind who you've got the wrestling son of a plumber's son at that point. I
And let's talk about how easily it could have gone unnoticed had the promotion floundered in its first couple of months, 6 months, 7 months, that first year being so crucial. I would argue that it was the star power of Cody Rhodes and the star power of Chris Jericho, two people who had names, that allowed the eyeballs to pay attention to all. I mean, unless you were a hardcore indie wrestling fan, there were a lot of guys. If you go back and look at AEW, we forget because it's been,
oh,
so many.
but I
Who
loved
were
all
they?
the
Who were they? If you didn't know, if you want to go,
right,
oh
right,
wait a
right,
minute,
right, fair.
I know Chris Jericho,
Uh-huh.
I know Cody Rhodes. I think that really helped bring the other guys the attention that we all knew that they deserved. But you might have had to be a hardcore Japanese wrestling fan to know who Kenny Omega was.
I think the ICW was very, very aware and vocal because, in my mind, Cody latched on to the coattails of first the Rhodes name, and with that, the popularity of the Elite, hitching his wagon to Kenny and the Bucks, and that popularity. But that's a bubble in this in this is the conversation we're having that I'm starting to realize that's a very a
It
small
is.
view. It's not a much larger picture because mainstream wise, yeah, I totally agree. Chris Jericho had to be that first AEW champion, no doubt about it. Who is Hangman Page? Hangman Adam who?
If
You
you
know
watch Ring of Honor, maybe you knew, but most people
exactly.
weren't watching Ring of Honor.
Yep.
People watching, we were, people watching us talk about
Sure.
it were,
Yeah.
but the general wrestling audience, who is Hangman
Yeah.
Page?
Yeah. But yeah, Cody definitely had, and Cody was a much bigger deal at this time, especially turning in performances like he did at All In,
Yeah,
against Nick Aldis, finally
yeah.
getting that 10 pounds of gold. So
I mean, obviously, the legacy people are going to think of with Cody Rhodes is, hey, he was one of the founders of AEW, and yeah, that is obviously part of his AEW legacy. But to me, it's also where he really began to shine on the microphone. He would do these really impassioned, promos on AEW. He would had the ongoing gimmick where he would bring in independent wrestlers to challenge him, and he exposed so many more.
and I loved that. Remember those
It was
challenges where you would
great.
bring these weirdos that nobody had ever heard of except us internet wrestling geeks, right?
Yes.
We know who Look Warhorse is, but nobody else does.
That TNT championship run that he was on, and the promos he gave, and the rub he gave to so many people he was giving
Hmm.
opportunities to me, it just really showed a selflessness on Cody's part. Um, and honestly, I think that that's something we have to talk about with his AEW run too. Despite the power he had backstage, and despite the fact from the time he was, I mean, yes, the NWA Championship I'm sure meant a lot to him. Ring of Honor World Championship meant a lot to him too. The story that we're going to get to about WrestleMania and is that, like, he always wanted to be the guy winning at the big stage, the world,
Hmm.
like, do the thing for the Rhodes family, and obviously he had an opportunity here. He never would he have had more of an opportunity as
Yeah,
someone with
the
a,
Booker. Yeah.
yeah. And to me, it says a lot about the character of Cody Rhodes, regardless of what people think about him. It says a lot about his character that he refused the temptation of making himself a world champion while he was in AEW.
Yeah, he even created a stipulation that he couldn't,
Yeah.
so
I mean, for all the hate he sometimes gets, we have to remember that he could have easily made himself the center of a promotion on his own when he had the creative power to do so, and he did not do so. And most people would do so. And the history of wrestling promotions and bookers, who were also on-screen talent. I mean, we've seen it 1,000 times. They tended to
Mhm.
put the belts on themselves.
Sure.
He did not. That did not, though, stop the AW fans from turning on him, which I think is another amazing part of this story.
You
It
know,
makes it even more remarkable that he goes to the WWE and is embraced and has been loved ever since. But I think sometimes a forgotten part of the telling of the Cody Rhodes story is like, oh yeah, at the end he was still a face and people just didn't want it.
no, people didn't want it because Cody became a heel, but didn't know he was a heel. In AEW, he was still trying very hard to be what he is in WWE now, babyface wise, but it just did not work. It
So what do you
it
think
did
that
not
is?
work.
And is this where Doug becomes the like the other fans that soured on? Is this when you began to boo Cody Rhodes, or was it
It,
after the falling out when he left AEW? When did you turn?
honestly, it was the falling out because my reality was shattered when I realized. First of all, I was really bothered by the whole Marty Skrull thing of Marty not being part of the elite that initially went to AEW. Turned out that was a pretty good move with the speaking out wrestling movement that happened. So that was a good move for Marty not to be involved with the elite. But the rest of the elite, especially on being the elite and watching them and seeing this camaraderie, I personally felt some sort of betrayal when Cody walked away from the rest of the elite and all elite wrestling to go back to WWE,
I'm
And
sure a
that's
lot of
what,
people felt that way. Those that weren't booing him because they were tired of him or whatever it was. But yeah, I can see that. You have this little thing, and
yeah.
now you're taking the money. But let's talk about all that then. This transition. I know that someday, because everything comes out in the wash, we will eventually find out what happened between Tony Khan and Cody
Mhm.
Rhodes. But for now, we're left not knowing why they had the falling out, just that they had a falling out. It's probably fair, though, to presume it was creative control.
Mhm.
Cody has at least hinted at the fact that he didn't have as much say backstage. It's obvious they got into this almost as partners at the beginning, and we
Oh
all
yeah.
know that Tony began to more like centralize like all decisions through him. And
Mhm.
I'm imagining Cody, and again, this is some speculation, but if you're going to just be an on-air talent, then you should get paid the most that you can get paid to be an on-air talent. If it's not going to be
Mhm.
your company anymore and your creative decisions anymore, let me just go make the most money I can make. And that's what he did. He returns to WWE. Um, Again, I think it's important to point out a lot of times now you can just, it seemed like a million years ago, even though it's not that long ago, that it's like, oh yeah, Cody Rhodes is a big deal in WWE now because, it's a new era and Triple H is like, pushing all the people that didn't get pushed first time around stuff. Cody made his return under Vince McMahon, and we forget
He
that.
absolutely, no, he absolutely did, and it was such a huge win, regardless of what WWE has ever said about AEW. They are recognized as competition, and it was such a huge coup for not just Vince to get one of their top guys who was really struggling as a babyface, and everybody I think was waiting for this massive heel turn, which I think would have been awesome in
It would
AEW.
have been. It would have
Because
been.
I think I've said before, if not on this show to you when we've talked about Cody, Cody was becoming this great, almost like a Stardust type character, where he was like this comic book villain that just did
Yeah.
not know he was the bad guy.
Yeah.
He's like Thanos. He's there to do the good work, but the good work is like this vile and evil thing, and it could have been really cool. We didn't get that. We got Steve Rogers, Captain America, returning to WWE, but that was such a huge coup because again, Vince didn't just get a performer from the competition. Vince got a founder and an EVP
Yeah.
from the competition.
Which you can't, I mean, I'm glad you bring that up because that's something you can't discount, that it's not just taking a top talent. I'm sure there was some scuffling that had to occur backstage to fill all the gaps left by the absence of Cody Rhodes. It wasn't just filling 8, 9, 10 minutes on a call sheet
Hmm.
on Wednesday nights, how we're going to do it.
Right.
There was a lot that Cody was doing that probably was not as easily replaceable as maybe Tony thought when they decided to part ways. And Vince was devil his due. Vince was, sure, you would poach an executive and you're getting a top tier talent who was not that when he left WWE in 2016. He returned that way. And I think that it's also, important to think about, the precedent that was set, because again, now we think of it as, you can't work here, you go there. If you can't work there, you go here. At the time, that road went one way. WWE would let you go and Tony Khan would hire you.
Yes.
That was it. It's happened many times now that people have returned, quote unquote, home, but no one was going from AEW to WWE until Cody did it.
Yeah, this is so true.
And now that's a possibility. So let's talk Cody and WWE here. No need to go into great detail on the whole finish the story arc. I think everyone who's watching us knows that. I think it's safe to say it was a smashing creative success on so many levels. He was cheered. He was embraced. It went on multiple years. He came up short. People were shocked. He was so beloved that they restructured an entire WrestleMania season to put him back where fans demanded that he would be, to finally, quote unquote, finish the story.
Finish the story. Yeah.
No matter how you look at it, this was one of the more successful creative arcs of the last decade in pro wrestling, but without a doubt, because it does go back to what we started and that little boy being raised by Dusty. It truly was a mix of a storyline that had a lot of real heart at the center of it, and fans we ate it up with a spoon.
Well, yeah, really, because I've said before, I don't like Cody, but this story is great. Of course, you've got me reframing my entire perception of Cody during our conversation tonight. So
now, I do know that during, especially that last push, maybe not at the first WrestleMania attempt, but by the time we get to Cody being cheated out and fans were cheering for him, Doug was right there cheering too.
Yeah. I was totally Team Cody because it's such a great story. And again, it involves Dusty, even though it doesn't involve Dusty. It's Dusty's son. He's finishing the story. He's not doing it for him. He's doing it for his dad. He's doing it for the love of wrestling. Damn it, Cody.
And you talk about two old marks our age. I mean, you start evoking Dusty Rhodes that much, we're going to get sentimental.
Absolutely.
It's Dusty. But I do want to spend the rest of the time we have, instead of talking about like the story that was, again, just a success on every level. But once you finish a story, then what do you do? Where do you go once the story is finished? And that's where we talk about Cody's reign since then. Obviously, it's hard to follow a historic run like Roman Reigns had, even though we're getting pretty close to Cody holding the title now for a year. And I know Triple H likes long title reigns, which I appreciate because I do too. But in the modern era, someone holding a title for a year in the modern wrestling landscape is still getting to be a pretty long time. Is there any chance at all, do you think, that he comes anywhere close to approaching what Roman had? Do we run that long with it?
I don't think so. I don't know who dethrones Cody, but I don't think he can have a nearly 4-year run. I don't think that. No, I don't think so. Don't think it can be done.
I think what they did with Roman was kind of a reset to show that this is the direction we want with long title reigns, and to make it mean something when he finally lost. But a year is, again, nothing to sneeze at, and he's had quite a year. If you look at the mini stories after the main story, there was the obvious recent work with Kevin Owens, which was fantastic, led to a fantastic match.
Yes.
He also has had great. And as far as his title reign, he's had great matches with AJ Styles. He had a great match with Logan Paul. He had a great match with Gunther. I will say this. I don't feel to me, this is where it is similar to Roman for the longest time. I don't feel that any of the matches he's had, as great as they've been, I never felt like Cody was in jeopardy of losing the title. In the same way that I never thought Roman was going to lose when he was facing Kevin Owens and AJ Styles and Logan Paul and most of the people I just named. It just never felt like he was in jeopardy.
No, I totally agree with that. I don't, there's not been a challenger yet where I feel that Cody is in jeopardy. Much like, by the time we got around to Cody and Roman two, there, you knew that's when Roman was in trouble and going to lose. But
I mean, in 4 years of Roman, I thought maybe Cody that first time. Sammy started to make me a believer there.
so close with Sammy, so
the
close.
the Brock Lesnar thing had me scratching my head. It could go either way, but outside of those three, none of the matches that Roman had made me think he was actually going to lose that title. And that's the way I felt about Cody with all the great matches he's had. No offense, Kevin Owens, you did an
Hmm.
amazing job, but I didn't think it was going to happen. Let's look ahead then to where we think it's going with Cody and WrestleMania this year, because it really does feel like, even though they teased us and didn't quite give it to us at Royal Rumble, that a Cena Cody dream match is a likely headliner at the upcoming WrestleMania. Is that a Jeopardy moment for Cody Rhodes against a Cena in his farewell year? Is this a possibility where it's like the Brock Lesnar thing a few years back, where maybe he doesn't, beat Roman, but we don't know for sure, unlike all the other Cody matches up till now? Is this one where it could go either way if they go Rhodes Cena?
It could go either way, but then there's a lot of talk about, big match John always, losing now.
He does
You,
now, but
you've
it's
got
his final
that.
year.
It's his final year, but you've got those talking points going into it to start working down John, which makes him the scrappy underdog in this, which clearly frames Cody as the heel, which I would love to see. I wanted to see it in AEW, and I think he could take what he started, or at least what I thought he was starting, and I thought his babyface work getting booed was him working towards becoming a heel in AEW. Maybe we take that, and the catalyst for that being, how brutal and savage that this match with KO made him, and the things he had to do, almost like that Roman Reigns. I don't want to do this, but you're making me do this to you. Uh, you take that, and then just add to it a bit at a time. Maybe have him crush Sammy soon. You're gonna have to do that, and then just kind of keep that savageness going, but still have that baby face that doesn't realize he's a heel, and start working him that way. And then John's got big match. John has this underdog story in his last year. I think
do,
that'd be great, but that's just armchair booking with me.
so you do think that with the time we have left until Mania, do you think that even if we get the Cena Rhodes dream match, that Rhodes survives?
I think Rhodes survives, almost like Reigns survived Cody first time around. Obviously, we can't go all the way around to another WrestleMania with John, because he said once he's done, he's done.
He's
And I do
done.
believe that. I believe he has a bigger future in Hollywood than he does
Oh yeah.
in the squared circle, especially if we can keep Peacemaker going. That'd be great. But maybe sometime later this year, something big like, SummerSlam, we work towards a Cody Cena too, and
So
then let John ride out into the sunset with that championship.
if Cena
Then,
doesn't if Cena doesn't take it at Mania, and it might be something that they do more later down the line, then that means that Rhodes has more stories that he has to go through.
hmm
We don't pay enough attention to the fact that there's a man that held that title for nearly 4 years that never got a rematch. And I know we've seen
hmm
Roman Cody as a long story that we told for over a number of years. We have never seen Roman as the one doing the chasing, though. Do you think
that's
Roman
true
Reigns
too.
as a challenger factors back into the Cody story?
I think it does, but I think there's a lot of plot lines that are interwoven right now, because you got Reigns actually, being out and may miss WrestleMania now due to his, Royal Rumble injuries, whatever. Yeah, so that's totally not going to lead to a Reigns Rollins at WrestleMania
No.
this year.
No, he's
So
definitely he's definitely tied up for at least a little while.
Yeah, so that's a longer way down the line. Plus, then there's this whole Punk favor with with
I was going to ask
Heyman
about Punk. Yeah, where
that
does Punk
may
factor
not
in?
play out at WrestleMania. Maybe it goes on down the line. Who knows? So I think there's a lot of moving parts to anything related to Roman Reigns right now. But look how long they've kept the Rollins Reigns rivalry alive. We split them up for years and bring them back together, and it's just like he got whacked in the back just like on last week's like Raw or something. So I think they could
So
milk that.
if they milk all of these,
Uh
then
huh.
we're basically saying that there is no heir apparent right now. There isn't like the next
No,
guy in line, the way that Cody apparently seemed to be
sure.
to Roman. There isn't that this is going to be Cody passing the torch. He's going to exceed a year. We think he'll probably make it successfully through Mania. And there really isn't a clear, while there's some good
You're
stories here
right.
we're talking about, there isn't a clear, and this is the guy he's going to pass it along to.
No,
Um,
there really isn't, unless they get another EVP from AEW to come in, and somebody gets one wing. Cody gets one winged angel for a 1, 2, 3.
So I agree with you that Cody's not going to hold it for 4 years. I also agree with you that I don't see a current end in sight, even at Mania. Which, bottom line it here. So yeah, I think that everyone loses the title eventually. I think even once he loses it, though, Rhodes is still the face of the TKO era of WWE. Just look at the way he's all over Netflix, even though he's not Raw.
Yes.
He's
Yeah.
like he is the well-spoken, handsome guy you can send to the Today Show, to the Tonight Show,
Mhm.
do the press tours. Even it's like John Cena or Hulk Hogan back in the day. They didn't always hold the championship, but they were
Mhm.
always in the main event, in the hunt for the championship, and they were always the face. I think
Yeah.
that for the foreseeable future, whether it's Roman or Punk or even Cena, when it comes to who is the public face of this
Oh
company,
yeah.
it is going to be Cody Rhodes for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and that's a persona that Cody has endeavored to cultivate, and what I'm now realizing has been his entire life. Um,
Yeah, yeah. It's been his entire life, and that is how he became, not just your world champion, but is literally the center of the promotion that is at its hottest peak since the Attitude Era. Who knows what the sky's limit could be for what we one day look back and think of when Cody's kids get emotional and hand him a Hall
mhm.
of Fame induction.
Interesting.
And with that, Doug,
Big finish, huh?
let's hit some big finish. That was fun.
That was
Um,
fun.
let's talk botch of the week, Doug. I'll start if you don't mind, because to
Go right.
me, how do you go a whole month worth of shows going, hey, this Netflix WWE partnership, they got this down, and then suddenly here comes the glitches. Uh, like you get your big debut when you had the most people watching, you do fine. And this
Mhm.
week it was 2.5 hours worth of like, is that just me? Is it my internet? And then you read that, it was everybody. So that was my
Yeah.
botch of the week, is that at this point you think they'd have it down. TKO, Netflix, let's not let this happen again.
Yeah, well, it's still fresh in Netflix doing the whole live thing. So, I think it's very fortunate they were able to pull it off on the big show. But I
Yeah.
think a lot of extra work went into that to making it just right. And then they probably had a lot more hands on that than they do from week to week. But they are still new to this. Not that I'm defending it, but I totally understand the botch there.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to just call myself out on this because again, we're still early in what I consider the week because I watch all my wrestling compacted into like 1 day, and we haven't hit that day yet. So I really don't even know what Kevin's talking about with Netflix. But don't tell him, okay? So for me, Kevin,
Yeah, Doug. Sorry.
Yeah, I
It's
got I
great.
got to call myself out on my whole flip flopping with Cody, on my whole on not being able to get out caught up on wrestling by the time we record in time for the sports ball event that's happening on Sunday. So I'm just a big botch this week because I go back and forth on Cody, and now you're making me question everything I've ever thought about the man. So
You,
thanks
you
for
know,
that. I'm the
I'm
botch.
I'm going to call you out on your botch and say you're absolutely not. You are a good embodiment of what I wanted this discussion to be, because we've all taken that roller coaster ride with Cody. I mean, fans didn't react to him at all. He was just there, and then they loved him or they hated him, and then they loved him for AEW, and then they hated him for leaving. Like, your reactions is that visceral. Like, you took this journey along with most of the WWE universe to even begrudgingly come back around and chant, "We want Cody." I mean, I think it's a great story about how you are a mirror for really the wrestling
Honestly,
public.
I realized more tonight than I ever have before that Cody is exactly what you could call the perfect wrestler because he can make you feel and make you love or make you hate sometimes at the same time. So damn
He is
you,
his
Kevin.
father's
Damn you,
son.
Cody. Yes, he is.
Well, then I will not bother to ask you, Doug, for your performance of the week or your match of the week. And I will try not to spoiler you here, but I will say my performance of the week
Yes.
uh, goes to Roman Reigns. And even though Roman wasn't around to do it, so I've been a wrestling fan for 40-ish plus years, 45 years, something along those lines. I also, as does Doug, work in healthcare. So I never, though, through all my years of wrestling fandom, seen healthcare treated on camera in the wrestling universe as it really is in real life until this Monday. And Doug, you'll see this when you watch Raw. Is
Okay.
apparently in the world of wrestling, HIPAA does exist because they would
Finally,
not talk. They basically said that what little we know of Roman's injury is what Roman has
oh,
allowed for us to say,
HIPAA
because
does exist.
unless he consents to talking about his condition, we can't
Yes.
tell you how he was. I mean, that's so good because for, again, all of my 40 years of fandom, you get beat up in the parking lot. We follow you to the
Yes.
hospital. We follow you in with cameras, and then we talk about everything that happened to you and all your internal injuries and everything they're doing. And for them to actually go on there and say, we don't really know what's going on because Roman isn't disclosing the information and because
Right.
privacy and all that. I'm like, it's
We,
HIPAA. That's
we see your
fantastic.
x-rays, we see your CTs, we see your surgery sometimes in wrestling.
Yeah. I thought it was a little touch to add it again, just a little bit
Nice.
of realism.
Okay.
I'm like,
I like that.
and it's a good way of like shutting down a story and keeping it mysterious. Like, we don't have to over explain, just say, hey, we don't know what his
Right.
condition is. He's not disclosing it. I thought that was
Yeah.
great.
He's
Match
not
of the week.
medically cleared.
I think that there's something on Dynamite last night, Doug, that you might end up having as one of your matches, but the swerve match with Ricochet is good.
Okay.
But I will, again, no spoilers for me at all. My match of the week actually is I am going with Carmen Petrovic versus Kalani Jordan on NXT this past week. I speak about it often that the NXT women's division is absolutely busting to the seams with talent, and they just were showing off that talent
Mm.
yet
Just
again.
showing off at this point.
They yet again were showing just how deep that roster is, and on any given night, two different performers can stand up and deliver a match like those two ladies did on Tuesday night. Definitely add that to your watch list for this weekend, which has
Yes.
already happened.
Right. Yes. This weekend, which yes, the things and the stuff because of sports ball.
And with that, Doug, we
Oh,
bring to the end another episode of the Two Bros Wrestling Show. We will be back next week on our regular schedule. Instead of dropping early, we'll be back live. We'll be on our regular schedule. It will be Valentine's Day weekend, so we have a special Valentine's related topic, and that is how loving wrestling can break your heart.
I love that. Oh my
We will
God.
talk about it next Sunday night. If you join us live, it's
Love
8
it.
o'clock here on Facebook, also on demand on our Facebook and YouTube channels. Until then,
Go watch some wrestling. That's what I'm going to do later in the week. Like on the weekend. Talking. We're live.
What? See
Go
ya.
watch some wrestling, everybody. Thanks.